20th, I think. Yeah, last week was 13.
Huh?
Last Wednesday was 13, so it's 20 today.
So can you write in the book, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Maybe sitting behind the camera or just...
No, this is not the camera, this is a projector.
Oh, okay.
I will be sitting here now.
Yeah, this pen. You want to write? Yes. Please. You okay now?
Oh, making the chanting. Okay. And
There's a choice.
and
And choice. That means I have to remind me 3D.
yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Ramon sits there. I sit next to Ramon. That's what I heard. When did you think this? Because otherwise, how do you know? Well, I don't know what it is. Unless you remind them, you say something, you have to say something, otherwise it goes. You know what I mean? You just say, I don't think I can do it. Because I'm up in the front there. And I'm on the knee.
See?
Oh, wow. It's pretty cool today. My goodness.
Towards at the end, he's going to do it again. Yeah, one in one in. Someone has to tell me.
I will contact her.
No, I can have a chance.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
contact with her for a while, so she's going to be like, I guess it's just James. Yeah, I see.
So I have a watch, I'll tell him.
Oh, he has a watch on his computer.
Yeah, okay.
And next to him, yeah, sure.
Someone has to remind me. He's old.
Because you're on the screen. It's Wednesday. It's all banging.
Who?
So pointing at his glasses so I can see. She does on the tree.
No, he never comes. Chandler doesn't come.
Yes.
It's Cheetah doesn't.
It's good I saw him on my thing.
He didn't know?
We were my cook said, where's Bodhi? I said, oh, I'm wondering, how does he have all these shoes? Okay.
He didn't know?
He seems not to have registered yet.
No.
Brahmali, have your adapter?
Sorry.
Have your adapter?
Oh, yeah, I should have it. Yeah.
If not, I can bring it from my cooking.
In theory, I have it. In practice. Sorry? We have to stop before 8:30.
8, tell me what.
I have a clock on my computer. Should be fine. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
okay?
If I forget, just remind me at
Tell me what time.
8:25.
Okay.
If I forget, yeah. Otherwise.
Hello.
Did you? You come here then? Okay. Yeah, well, okay. Yay.
But you can answer, I don't know.
You know already. Okay.
You have.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
He's away Friday, you can ask the question. I know.
That's a good question. We can just move the seat across a little bit. Let's see what happens. Turn it on and see what. Or do you need my?
The lid is still on, I think. The lid is on in front, so I might bring it.
Should I move a little bit across? Oui. Okay.
Is
It's okay. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. How's it gonna work with the camera? If I move across, is it gonna work? Or is this the? Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, man. What time is it? Oh, 7:16. Perfect timing. 7:16. Yeah. Is everyone here? Yeah.
Everyone is going to be here.
Everyone who's here is here.
Senior coming a bit late because
Okay.
we have to route some of their glasses.
Okay. So let me just get this gear on first of all. Yeah, sure, absolutely. We're going to do chanting. I was just going to talk about that now, actually. So this is kind of coming up next. So you may have heard, some of you who know Hugh Sykes. Yeah, probably many of you know Hugh Sykes. He passed away early this morning. And they have some kind of ceremony at Dhammaloka tonight. Actually, they have started already at Dhammaloka Center. And so they asked us, I think they sort of implied they wanted us to be involved somehow. So we suggested we can do some chanting, and we can actually project that chanting at Dhammaloka Center from here, because now we have all the equipment. Yeah. So, but it wasn't 7:15. Was not a good time for them. So we suggested after the talk instead. So at 8:30 we're going to do the chanting. So please don't leave straight away if you want to be part of the chanting. Especially the monks and anyone else who wants to be part. At 8:30 we'll do the chanting for Hugh and also for the other people who are on the list here. So that is just the information, and if the bhikkhuni is at Dhammasara, if you want to be part of the chanting as well, you're very welcome to do so. We'll do that at 8:30 for Hugh Sykes. Okay, so let us come back to the Brahmajala Sutta. Brahma's net, the net that catches all the wrong views. And last time we had a look at the introductory section. Actually, there's more introduction coming now, really. And having looked at the introductory, now we're going to look at the section on ethics, according to Ajahn Sujato. And so this is all about the morality. So this is the morality of the Buddhist path. And so this is divided into 3 sections, and this very long, most detailed explanation of ethics, especially monastic ethics, that you find in the suttas, is found in the Brahmajala and then in the Samanyapala Sutta, which is number 2, after the one after this one in the Digha Nikaya. So let us have a look at this. Let's just quickly recap what we said last time. Wow, the font is on the large side. Okay, so this is all irrelevant, so let's move on to the next section here. So, when an ordinary person speaks praise of the realized one, they speak only of trivial, insignificant details of mere ethics. Nola. Okay, so here we are again. So they speak of merely of things, trivial, insignificant details of mere ethics. So this is important to understand this in the right way. When we talk about ethics being trivial and insignificant, it is in comparison to other things. It is not trivial and insignificant on its own. Obviously, ethics is absolutely fundamental to the monastic life and to the lay life and to any life that is well lived. It is absolutely fundamental. So it is certainly significant and it's certainly not trivial. But the point is that ethics exists in a lot of religions. A lot of philosophies have very good systems of ethics, and that is not what makes Buddhism special. That is not what makes it stand out. But the deeper aspects of Buddhism are very hard to see from the outside. So if you are an ordinary person, here the Putujana, it's very hard to be able to judge whether someone has that deep insight into the nature of reality which the Buddha has. You can only see the ethics, and that's why you tend to praise the Buddha for ethics. Of course, if ethics are very consistently practiced, and someone practices is always very kind, always has a lot of compassion and understanding, that will tend to say something about the underlying qualities as well, perhaps their view, perhaps their insight, and all of these kind of things. But very often it doesn't go all that far. So what is it that is significant? And this is what this sutta is about. It's about the net of 62 different views. And as I mentioned last time, the thing that underlies these 62 wrong views is personality view. Whenever there is personality view, sakkaya ditthi, in other words, that there is an existing entity somehow related to the five khandhas, that is when these 62 views arise. They're all dependent and related somehow to the idea of personal identity. That is where they arise from, and that is what they are about. So the Buddha, his profound insight is to see through that sakkaya ditthi, sakkaya nirodha, the ending of the of these views of an existing self, and that is what the Buddha really is about. So the sutta is going to start off with then talking about these insignificant details, and then it's going to move on to talk about the views afterwards. That is what this really is about here. Does everyone make sense to everyone? If it doesn't make sense, please say doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's okay. And then we can maybe sensify those unsensible things. So we'll see. Okay, the realized one here is the Bhagava. Oh, hey, actually here's the Tathagata. Okay, that's good, because the Buddha is talking about himself. Okay. So, what are these things? Yeah. So now comes the list of things that are supposedly mere details. And it's a bit chopped off there. So, okay, so this is the first one of these various things that are considered here to be not the profound aspect of the Buddha, but the more superficial one. The ascetic Gautama has given up killing living creatures. He has renounced the rod and the sword. He is scrupulous and kind, living full of compassion for all living beings. So this is the first thing. The ascetic Gautama here is the word that is used because we're talking about this. These are outside people, outside of Buddhism, talking about the Buddha. They call him always the ascetic Gautama. Yeah? And so he has given up the killing of living creatures. And this particular expression that you see here, this is the same expression that you find in the Dasakusala Kamapata, the 10 pathways of wholesome action that you find in the suttas in a number of places, and it is probably in some ways the detailed explanation of Buddhist ethics. So this is part of that. So this is kind of core, really. You find it here in the gradual training. You find it in a sutta like the what is it called? Shulahatipadopama Sutta, the shorter sutta on the elephant's footprint, which for those of you who have a Sri Lankan background, you will know was one of the suttas taught by Mahinda when he got to Sri Lanka, and he converted the whole royal household to become Buddhist. So that also has a similar kind of expression, and we'll compare the suttas a little bit afterwards. He has renounced rod and sword. Yeah, the Pali word for rod is danda. Where is Nibbutto? At the back? No, he's not here. Okay, where is he? Because these are Indian words. Yeah, so if you go to if you look at these words, dand. Do you have that word in Bengali? Dand. Danda. Stick, like punishment. Exactly. Yeah. So the same word. Yeah, we still have in the present day. Yeah. Do you have those words in Sinhala as well? Done? Yes, you do. Okay, done. It means like punishment. Yeah, okay. So rod here is interesting because rod or stick, even in English, you say giving someone stick is like punishment. Yeah, so even in English, you have the same ideas. So one of the ways of thinking about this is that you have renounced punishment. No more punishment and no more sword. I don't know if sword sounds a bit kind of violent, probably cutting off people's heads or something. But so there's quite a broad idea here, the idea that we give up any kind of violence or persecution, but also the idea of giving up punishment. And of course, that is what you find, especially within the Sangha, is that there is no physical punishment as such. That has all been given up. There is kind of lesser punishments, if you like. So if you break a Sangha rule, then those rehabilitation procedures can perhaps be regarded as slightly punishing, although I don't think that's the intent. I think that's just one of the consequences of them, but I don't think that's the intent. I think rehabilitation is always the intent. But I think this is part of it, that there's no punishment is basically out. And that is very interesting. You look at the large parts of the Buddhist world, and it's often a very conservative world, the Buddhist world. Many Buddhist countries are quite conservative. And if you look at some of the strange things that happens in Buddhist countries, quite a lot of physical punishment. It's quite common. And I remember there's quite a well-known Norwegian Buddhist who's been very kind of active in international Buddhist fora, in the World Federation of Buddhists and these sort of things. And he was putting forward a resolution that all Buddhist countries should strive to eliminate capital punishment. And it was voted down. That's kind of astonishing, isn't it? And that shows you how the theory of these things is kind of, we all know these things. But when it comes to these countries that are supposed to be governed, of course a country can't really be Buddhist. That's what they call themselves. Actually, there's often a long distance between the theory and the practice. So these are important things. And then it says, I think very importantly towards the end here, that you are scrupulous and kind, living full of compassion for all living beings. And this is part of this first precept, or this first way of living and acting here. And it's very interesting because what it shows us is that when we talk about precepts which are against certain actions, it doesn't just mean that you are against certain actions, it means that you are living the exact opposite. You are living with compassion and kindness. You have this is much deeper than just avoiding the bad things. It's actually doing the good things. So here it is almost equating the lack of violence with compassion, which is actually very interesting when you think about it, because what it means, what does that mean? Well, it means that what about a situation where you kill a living creature, but you are coming from compassion? What about that kind of situation? It doesn't fit in to this kind of way, because the assumption here is that if you are compassionate, you will not kill. But what if there are ethical situations whereby you can kill, but you're coming from compassion and wisdom? Or you can lie, perhaps, but you're coming from compassion and wisdom. How do these things fit in? And the point, of course, is that, and this is seen in other suttas, is that it is compassion that is the critical thing that decides whether something is ethical or not. The killing is just a rough approximation. You shouldn't kill. It's a rough approximation to ethics. But the reality, the real ethical depth, the real ethical foundation is where you're coming from and why you're doing things. Are you coming from a wholesome motivation or not? Are you being compassionate? Are you being wise in your actions? And you can see how that comes out in this one. It's almost as if it doesn't really countenance the possibility of, if you don't kill, it means you are compassionate, by definition. So the idea, the compassion here is the foundational thing that really matters. And this becomes clearer if you read some of the other suttas. There are suttas, I think it's called the Hetu Sutta or something like that. Hetu means like a root or a foundation. And it talks about what are the foundations for wholesome and unwholesome actions. And the foundation for wholesome actions are always the wholesome roots. Aloba, adosa, amoha. In other words, non-greed, or you can call it generosity, or non-dosa, which means non-anger, or compassion and kindness, and then non-moha, non-delusion, the last one. That is really the foundation. And this is one of those beautiful things about the Buddhist ethics, is that it is founded on a system that is very, very flexible, because it has to do with motivation, not with actions. The vast majority of ethical systems around the world, they prescribe certain actions. You can't do those actions, and they prescribe perhaps other actions. The specific actions are not allowed. But in Buddhism, it's not the action as such which is the bad karma not allowed. It has to do with your motivation. Why are you doing it? And that gives rise to a very, very flexible ethical system that you can apply in almost any society at any time. Whether you do stem cell research or whether you have euthanasia debate like we had here, or whatever it is, this ethical system applies to all of those situations. Not only does it apply, but it applies in a very kind of in a way that makes a lot of sense, which actually makes sense from a modern perspective as well. It's not just some kind of ancient god that laid down certain rules that fitted 2,000 years ago or whatever it is, but actually it is a system that is based on a certain logic, a certain coherent way of thinking about these things. So this, I think, is one of the beautiful things about Buddhism, is the Buddhist ethical system, one of the very jewels at the heart of, not at the heart perhaps, but one of the jewels of Buddhism is the way we can deal with Buddhist ethics. And I look forward to talking about that at the upcoming workshop at Dhammaloka. That will be with Bodhinyana. We're going to be doing that one together. This is really, really nice stuff to talk about. Then we can go into great detail about the various ethical dilemmas. Vegetarianism is going to be interesting. It's going to be... And these kind of things that people love to argue about. So if you like to argue, anyone here, please come to those workshops and you can come and argue with us. So that is the first way of living, or the first things that have been given up by the Buddha, for which he is praised by the Bodhinyas. So is everyone happy with that? Venerable Metaji?
So there's been some recent issues about ethics within Buddhism generally. So the Tibetans, when they said it's okay to have a consort, or behavior of Sagar Rinpoche was okay as far as like teachers are concerned, I do think there needs to be a framework, and Buddhism will get tainted unless there is some clarity around here.
Yeah, absolutely. In the situation like that, you just have to go. Again, you can use the foundations of Buddhism to decide whether that conduct was appropriate or not. There's two ways of looking at Buddhist ethics. One is the consequence it has for other people around you. Are you hurting others? And the other one is where you're coming from. And I think in both of those cases, he failed miserably. So it's not, it's, I think, from a very standard, straight down the line Buddhist perspective, it's obviously not the case that it was okay what he did. I think that is, to me, it seems like a really dodgy argument, and I suspect it comes from people who may not know these teachings well enough. So I think it's just a matter of applying these early teachings. Of course, it depends on the people if they really believe in these suttas, or whether they have their own suttas, whether they are following some kind of Mahayana system, whereby it is one of the problems with Mahayana, it is often accepted that you can break precepts as long as it is for that of compassion for others. And they would probably argue, is that of compassion for others? That's probably what they would argue. So it depends on complicated issues like that, and what kind of suttas they use and things, which makes it hard. And sometimes it means, unfortunately, that it's very hard for, as a Theravadan Buddhist, to see eye to eye with the Mahayanas when these kind of things come up. Yes, John.
Tibetan Buddhism, I believe, are of Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism, like in South Korea, they follow the traditional rules very strictly, actually.
Yeah. It varies a lot whether following strictly or not. I spoke to some of the South Korean monks who were here, and they said that some of them kept them really strictly, but they said that lots of people in South Korea which don't really bother about the rules, and they just follow the Mahayana ideas. So apparently it varies quite significantly. Okay. So that is the first one. So that is just the one I wanted to look at the most, just to bring out some of the ideas of Buddhist ethics. So there you have it in Pali. This is from Bhante Sujata's website. So you have the word danda, danda in modern Hindi or Bengali or what is it, Punjabi? So all of these words are kind of fundamental words in Buddhism. You have hita here. Hita is like benefit. Then you have anukampa, which is obviously compassion. Yeah, and satta here is like sword. Yeah, dayapano, being compassionate or sympathetic. And these are all kind of words that are core aspects.
Satta also knife.
Yeah, well, it means both knife and sword. It's kind of, I think the size of the thing is kind of a bit more variable in Pali than it is in English. In English, we have clear, different words. I think they have one word for the same thing. Yeah. It also means caravan. It also means teacher. Satta is this incredibly multi-meaning, multivalent word. Yeah. Lay down the caravan. That is one of the classics, actually. It's one of the suttas in the Bhikkhuni Vinaya, is where they said that the bhikkhuni cannot travel alone without a satta. Yeah? So I.B. Horn translates, she cannot travel alone without a knife. But it means a caravan, right? That's one of the classic mistranslations. It's one of those, one of the great ones. Okay, let's not get too carried away. So such is the ordinary person's praise of the realized one. Yeah, you can see why they would praise that, but it's not enough. Then we have the next one. The ascetic Gautama has given up stealing. He takes only what is given. He expects only what is given. He keeps himself clean by not thieving. So the second precept, and I don't want to say too much about this, except to say that he expects only what is given is a slightly strange thing. What exactly does it mean? You expect only what is given? You expect what is not given? That would be really weird, right? So it's kind of strange. And I think it is not actually the right translation. I think the point here is that he wishes only what is given. In other words, he doesn't have any desire beyond what is given to you. So that means that your desires are very narrowed down. It means that you're very satisfied with just getting what you want. You don't actually look beyond the things that ordinary people will give you. I think that is the point here. Expect only what's given. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I think here that Bhante Sujato has only copied what Bhikkhu Bodhi had, because that is basically the same thing. But then it becomes much more beautiful. Yeah. So not only do you not steal anything, you don't even have the idea of having anything beyond what is given to you. And then, of course, that leads on to one of the next factors of the path, which is the idea of contentment. Yeah, it comes very beautifully from that. And then you can see how this kind of holds together here. Then you have the idea that you keep yourself clean by not stealing. And the Pali word here is suchi bhutena. Suchi means pure. So you have this idea of purity by not stealing here. And it's interesting that this is specifically said under the precept of stealing, not under any of the other ones, or the factor of stealing here. That is where it talks about being pure, which is kind of interesting. And I don't know exactly why that is. Anyone have any idea why that is? That this comes under stealing, that you're being pure, not stealing.
The others don't have purity.
Well, the others doesn't say that specifically. It only says specifically under stealing that you keep yourself pure by not stealing. But it doesn't actually come under any of the other ones. So it's interesting. So I wonder whether there's something special about stealing which makes you impure or whatever. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, it's there. If anyone has any ideas, please tell me at some point, because I'm interested in this particular point. I've never really been able to figure out what's going on there. Such is an ordinary person's praise of the Tathagata. The ascetic Gautama has given up unchastity. He is celibate, set apart, avoiding the common practice of sex. So here, an important point with this is that what you have given up is not really unchastity. The Pali word is abrahmacharya. So what you have given up is sexual activity, of all types. That is what it means. So you are celibate. You are sexually inactive. Might be a better way of putting it. And that is really the right understanding. Then it becomes very clear what the meaning is. but the word celibate and chaste are actually are much more ambiguous than that. So it's hard to really get to the core of what this is about. So Brahmacharya is the Brahma conduct, and Brahma, of course, is equivalent to the gods that have been reborn in the jhana realms. So they are completely gone beyond any attraction to any sensual pleasures. So this is part of the reason why this is called the Brahma conduct, or the Abrahmacharya. So, such is an ordinary person's praise of the realized one. Those are the three kinds of right conduct that you find throughout the suttas. And next one we're going to move on to speech. Any questions about the conduct so far? I'm going fairly fast because this is not really the core of this teaching, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. So just everyone happy? Okay, great. So next one. They said the Gautama has given up lying. He speaks the truth and sticks to the truth. He is honest and trustworthy and doesn't trick the world with his words. So again, fairly straightforward, and you can see here you have the negative side, which is that you give up lying, and then you have the opposite, the positive side, that you are honest and trustworthy. So you have the two sides of the things, two sides of the coin. And as always, the point here is not just to avoid lying. The point is really to be straightforward and honest in all ways, not just to kind of find, okay, what can I get away with? It's not like being a lawyer or anything like that. It's more like kind of making this as strong as possible. So that is the lying aspect. And as always, that these things, as far as I'm concerned, they come in a certain sequence. So lying is the worst kind of bad speech, and that's why it comes first, and then the other one come in sequence, as far as I can see. So, such is the ordinary person's praise of the Tathagata. They said the Gautama has given up divisive speech. He doesn't repeat in one place what he has heard in another, so as to divide people against each other. Instead, he reconciles those who are divided, supporting unity, delighting in harmony, loving harmony, speaking words that promote harmony. So, you heard the word harmony and started to... No, I'm just being naughty. So, again, one of those great little passages, the idea of kind of loving harmony, loving, not being divisive, and etc. And it's one of those things that can be quite, interesting in a life like monastic life, where you live with other people all the time. It's very easy sometimes to kind of be fault-finding and see the negative things in people, and sometimes it is perhaps unavoidable, but it's it's something that happens. And it's something that we have to be very careful with, especially when we talk about it to others, because it's very easy to take things the wrong way. And I know that for myself, I certainly try my very best to see the good in my fellow monastics, and I certainly know Ajahn Brahm certainly does that, and he's obviously very able to do it. And there's a lot of good things to be seen. It's just a matter of turning your attention in the right way. It's so easy in ordinary life to see the negative things, because I don't know, after a while I guess you just get used to people, and then you kind of see the negative. It seems to be one of the human traits that we do that. But actually, there's a lot of good things to see there. And sometimes we just need to keep on training the mind to see the positive and remember that at all times, and then forgiving those minor flaws that may still be there in the people around us, and then talk about these things in the right way. And then we actually create harmony. The more we talk about the negative qualities in the people around us, the more likely is that you will also have a sense of disharmony in the community, because you actually build up those negative perceptions, and you encourage those negative perceptions in other people instead of actually encouraging the positive ones. So this is, I think, an important one in community life, and not always so easy to live up to. Any comments on that one?
And how about sometimes is not translated for the divisive speech or not?
I would say gossip is like a mixture of divisive speech and idle chatter, I would say. Kind of comes somewhere between the two, because gossip can also just be just talking nonsense. But gossip can also be negative things about people. So I would say it's a bit of both. Yeah, but especially if gossip is, but yeah, often it does turn negative. So yeah. Rumors, yeah. Well, that's what gossip is, isn't it? Gossip is kind of talking rumors and things. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that is the Pasunavacha. Such is an ordinary person's praise of the realized one. The ascetic Gautama has given up harsh speech. He speaks in a way that is mellow, pleasing to the ear, lovely, going to the heart, polite, likable, and agreeable to people. And this is also very nicely put in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. Let me just bring it up because it's actually quite nice the way he talks about it. So where is it? So here is Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. Or he might say, having abandoned harsh speech, the recluse Gautama abstains from harsh speech. He speaks only such words as are gentle, pleasing to the ear, endearing, going to the heart, urbane, amiable, and agreeable to many people. Actually, I think that's an old translation of it, so maybe not quite as good, but yeah. So, and this is again the idea, the opposite of harsh speech. Yeah, and you notice it is the third kind of speech here. So divisive is actually presumably worse than harsh speech. And then you get this beautiful thing about the way to speak in the right way. And it's hard to always speak like this. Yeah, the pleasing to the ear, lovely, going to the heart. But sometimes you know how that works. Sometimes you hear people who speak exactly like this, and it's actually very pleasant when that happens. People have this kind of softness and gentleness about it. And it's very beautiful. You feel at ease in the company. You feel relaxed. You don't kind of jump up and down, jump because the speech is rough or whatever. So it's very very beautiful part of the idea of right speech. Yes.
I know you were talking about that it goes from the worse to the less worse.
Yeah.
So would that be because of the impact it has, or?
I would say.
What do you think?
Well, maybe the comic severity, because this is about our practice. So I would argue the things that are most disturbing for our practice. So things like musavada, the lying, is, for example, found in the 5 precepts, but not the other kinds of wrong speech. Yeah, musavada. What else is it? So sometimes you get this feeling by reading the suttas and by reading other parts that actually there is a hierarchy there in that way. That is my feeling. Some people might disagree with that. I heard that's the case sometimes, but that's my sense. And usually things have a kind of structure in the suttas.
And it would be. I mean, I was thinking of the impact in the people around you.
Yeah.
But the impact on your own mind.
I think that is the main thing here, because this is about our practice. Yeah, by going to enlightenment, awakening. So I think that must be the main reason why it's like that. Yeah. Yeah, also you have in the beginning of the Patimokkha, it says, it talks about the musavada being the obstacle, in the introduction to the Patimokkha. Okay, I can't get around my head around it now, but anyway, it's there. So there's a few things, exactly, to point in that way. Okay, so anyway,
Could you give an example of urbane speech?
Urbane, I think polite is better, like it has here. You like urbane? Urbane is like this kind of word that someone who is very kind of polished and speaks very posh language and has a fluent vocabulary and is very articulate. That's kind of urbane speech. And he goes to the kind of the restaurant and speaks politics and discusses the art world with his buddies. That's urbane speech. Something like that. So it's a very high-fluting word, and it's not something that I think the Buddha would use. So I think polite is far more correct here rather than urbane. Anyway, okay. So such is an ordinary person's praise of the realized one. The Siddha Gautama has given up talking nonsense. His words are timely, true, and meaningful, in line with the teaching and the training. He says such things at the right time that are valuable, reasonable, succinct, and beneficial. It's quite nice, isn't it? So this is the sampapalapa. This is actually the Pali word for talking nonsense. Sampapalapa. Sounds like nonsense, doesn't it? Sampapalapa. So that is the Pali word. And so the idea here is to basically to talk about things that are meaningful and useful, in line with the teaching and the training. The Pali here is Dhamma Vinaya. Yeah, so he translates as teaching and training, which I really agree with. That's exactly how I would translate these words as well. The original meaning of the word Vinaya is more training than it is the Vinaya Pitaka as such. And all of these things are nice. A timely speech, speaking at the right time. Yeah, true, meaningful, actually has some purpose. It has something that helps you in your life, that actually adds value rather than detracts value. Not speech can often detract value rather than add value. You can see that. Yeah, and words that are valuable, reasonable, succinct, and beneficial. It sums up the idea of right speech in a way that is more than just the last factor here. It almost sums up the entire idea of right speech very beautifully. So, but even though it is very beautiful, still, such is the ordinary person's praise of the Tathagata. So it still doesn't really get to the point of what the Buddha is about. Okay. So any comments on that so far? Those are the right speech and right action we have just looked at, and it kind of fulfills those. That is really the limit of those two categories. So let us move on to the next one. The ascetic Gautama refrains from injuring plants and seeds.
Ajahn,
Yeah.
well, going along with that thing where you said that it's going more and more important, but I think it doesn't go all the time to higher and higher sila practices. Like now we're going into speech with injury.
Yeah, but that is because that, the thing is with the suttas is that you have certain standard passages that belong together. Yeah. So those previous ones, they all belong together, always in that sequence. And these ones here are extra things that come on top of that, and they don't get stuck into that sequence because it's an oral tradition. Then they get added either before or after. Yeah. So and that is why they tend to come in blocks of meaning. And then if you're going to add extra things, they had to add it outside of that, and that's why you don't here get a natural sequence. Yeah. So I think that's So that's I think what's going on here.
So this would be more the monastic part.
That's another thing. Now we're moving more onto the monastic path, even though all of these things are sort of included in that. That's true. Yeah. So refrain from injuring plants and seeds. What exactly does this mean? It's an interesting point. Because we had a discussion when I last did the Vinaya, not last time, but the one before, at the Pachitta 11, about Bhutagama Pata Bhattaya, which is injuring vegetation, and about what that means from a perspective of the Patimokkha rules. It's interesting why it is here, and whether it is here because it actually really is something that is fundamental to Buddhist ethics, or whether it's here because, again, it is one of those things that was accepted in Indian society. And I think all the evidence, apart from what you see here, really is that this is something that was done in Indian society, and it's not something that really has any major ethical or any ethical ramifications. So I think it's very... So this is fascinating why it is here. It may simply be here because this is what is considered necessary for an ascetic. Yeah, if you're going to be a monastic, this is kind of a requirement rather than actually being something that has direct ethical conduct. Of course, the whole passage here is about people outside of Buddhism praising the Buddha. Yeah, so they would expect them to praise him in regard to things that are generally accepted in society. So from that point of view, it kind of makes sense. And I discussed in quite a bit of detail also when we did that particular Pachitya rule about the Kappiya ceremony. Because I must admit I have maybe aversion is aversion too strong a word. I have a bit of aversion towards that ceremony because to my mind that whole ceremony of Kappiya and Karohi is a movement towards purification by ritual. If you can sort of strike a match and kind of wave the match over the thing, or touch it with your nail and then it becomes pure, and you touch one and everything becomes pure. That is, to my mind, maybe I have misunderstood, but to my mind that's purification by ritual. Now you can eat it because someone has, kind of cut it with one fruit with the nails. This is one of the things the Buddha warns against in the suttas, the idea of purification by ritual, the idea that you can be purified by bathing in the river Ganges or by water splashing ceremonies or whatever. So for that reason, I must admit I'm dubious about that, and it kind of comes in here.
So you would say that the Samanas and Brahmins at that time would stick to this?
Yes, maybe not the Brahmins, but certainly ascetics. Maybe Brahmins as well. But it seems to have been a general accepted practice in a society that if you were serious spiritual practitioners, this is what you did. And so for that reason, we have inherited that for that reason, rather than because it's actually ethically necessary. Hirma-sampa.
There's more sort of a public relations sort of image that so far in that he doesn't harm plants and seeds. It's just sort of an extension of that image.
I think it is. I think it's a PR thing. Absolutely. And I think that you can only go against. I mean, there's enough of things in Buddhism already that goes against the grain. And if you do too many things that goes against the grain, people will probably reject you. So sometimes you probably have to compromise a little bit, with society. You can't be this complete, uncompromising person because you won't be taken seriously by anyone. There will be one Buddha who has 0 disciples. That will be the end of the thing. So, exactly. Okay, anyway. So we have the next one. This is the eats in one part of the day, abstaining from eating at night and food at the wrong time. This is the eka battika. Eka, one, batta is meal. And so there's a one mealer or something like that is the meaning of this word. And it is often translated as one part of the day. In fact, I think I argued with Bhikkhu Bodhi that this should be the translation. And I think he followed my advice, and I think probably it's wrong here. This is what you often find out. You advise other people what to do, and afterwards you realize that actually you're probably wrong. This is typical. And now I think what it means is, it means you eat one meal a day. I think that was the standard. Eka battika is the most obvious meaning of eka battika, one meal. One part of the day, you're really adding quite a bit of extra information to get one part of the day. So I think that is actually the meaning of this word. So that was the general accepted standard, but it was allowable to eat more than one meal, but that was kind of the standard at that time, I think. So then we have the standard parts of the 8 precepts. You refrain from dancing, singing, music, and seeing shows. And this also means, as someone pointed out, that you can't do these things yourself. You can't go back to your cutie and dance. or play. You can't dance anyway. You can't even pretend to dance. Or play instruments.
But it says refrain.
Refrain from singing. Music. Okay, but or usually it is actually like say seeing. Often the question is whether you do it or you see it, or you go to these things. That's the kind of distinction. Usually it is understood as you don't see these things, but doing them would be the same thing. You're right. Actually, here it has the right phrasing, so you're right. You refrain from beautifying, adorning yourself with garlands, perfumes, and makeup. Okay. So, you refrain from high and luxurious beds. Uchasayana, Mahasayana. So we have to make sure that those new beds we're making, Senor, is within the limits of high and luxurious. You refrain from receiving gold and money, jata, rupa, rajata, patigahana. So Yeah, so all of these basic ideas, all of the 10 precepts are really in here, except what is missing? Yes, exactly. Because you were a bit primed on that one, so that's good. Drinking alcohol is missing. Yeah, it was very fascinating. Yeah, and it is, as always. Remember that I mentioned that last time that there is a parallel to the sutta in the Agamas in Chinese, and that one does actually have alcohol in there in the Chinese one. So, which one is more likely to be right, the Pali or the Chinese? So I would say the Pali is more likely to be right, because the Pali is in some ways the more unreasonable in a certain way, because you would expect the 5 precepts to be there. It is more likely that alcohol has been added later on for completion than somebody took it out. That's usually the way. Usually the simpler text is earlier, the more complex text is usually later. That's usually how texts tend to evolve. This is the natural evolution of things. And this is one of those interesting things that you find in the Pali Sutta, that drinking alcohol is found, but not that often compared to the other precepts. So what does that mean? Does that mean it's okay to drink?
Yes.
Okay, so is that what you do at your kuti at night?
Well, the thing with the sila, I mean, whatever leads to harmony, so... let's say, I'm not saying drinking alcohol leads to harmony, I'm saying that if, let's say, you're in a private dwelling and you're it's part of the medicine, I'm not taking
you're depressed,
but how much of that leads away from harmony from us as a community?
How much drinking leads away from harmony?
Yeah. If you're by yourself.
If you're by yourself. This is an interesting question. I think it is an interesting question. I think the reason that is always given in the suttas why you shouldn't drink is because it tends to lead you to break the precepts. That's what it does. But there's obviously more to it than that. I don't think that's the end of the story. And another one is that it just makes you dull. It kind of damages your mindfulness, your ability to be clear. Another one is that it tends to carry on from life to life. You create a habit, and then you drink in this life, and you continue drinking in the next life because you've been doing it. These are very habit-forming things, specifically mentioned in the suttas, by the way, as one of those things that you always tend to do more of.
But not specifically on the alcohol.
Yeah, specifically for alcohol.
But it's habit-forming.
Yeah, there's 3 things that you tend to do more and more of. That there's no end to. Alcohol is one of those 3. You tend to always increase. It's like once you get into it, it tends to kind of.
Which sequence is that? Where is that coming?
Somewhere in the Gutras, I think. Gutra 3 is probably.
Is it like sleeping and eating?
I think it's what is it again? It's alcohol. Maybe it's sleeping as well. Sleeping, you can never really get enough. You always feel it's easy to feel tired when you wake up. And I think the last one is sexual intercourse. Those are the 3 things.
Was it also in the ones that make someone not shy?
Yes, that's exactly right. That's another good sutta. You drink, it makes you, if you drink alcohol, if you use money, if you have sexual intercourse, or if you have wrong livelihood, are the 4 things that make you not shine as a monastic.
And for myself, just if I think about the Dhammapada, and that the mind is our most important asset, we're basically polluting the mind. It's pretty basic.
I would agree.
But I mean, in this sense, we're giving more and more reasons why you shouldn't.
But
it's not mentioned there.
No, but it's not mentioned here, but it's mentioned elsewhere. So it's not missing from the sutta. It's just that it's less prominent than the other aspects of morality.
But I mean, again, this conversation becomes this really high thing. But if it was such a high thing, you would expect it to be mentioned in many places.
It isn't mentioned in quite a few places.
You would expect it even mentioned in
here. But I think I'm just trying to find out why it should be banned at all. What is the reason why it is banned? And that's that we're just making up the reasons why alcohol is not recommended here.
Yeah, but why is it not part of this?
Yeah, well, like there was everybody's like chiming in. It's such a bad thing. It doesn't, makes you not shine. It's just like it's considered as sexual intercourse, which is really for us is one of the high offenses. And it's not mentioned.
Remember, this is really meant for monastics. We're talking about the Buddha here. So one of the reasons could be that it was so obvious that you shouldn't drink that it's not even mentioned. That could be one reason.
Well, they could be argued that that the rule came from there that the monks were drinking at the time.
Yeah, well, the monks weren't drinking. I was quite. You remember the origin story to that one?
Yes, but that's why they offered him alcohol because it was loud.
Yeah, there was a group of 6, I think, or something, who kind of set him up, and then he drank alcohol when he came to the houses. It's true, but it may have generally been so obvious that you shouldn't drink, that there was no need to mention it. That's one possibility. Yeah. And so you find it maybe more for lay people, because for them drinking would be part of the well, that could be one reason. But I think another reason is that it actually is not so immoral in its own right. That is why.
That was my argument.
Yeah, and I think that's the true argument, because it specifically says that you drink and it makes you break pamadatana. It is a basis for pamada, which means breaking your precepts. So I think that is the reason. It's also always the last one of the 5 precepts. And again, sequence, the last one is probably the least important one. So again, it kind of fits with that as well. Yeah. But I don't want to take it so far to say that it doesn't matter. That's where you have to be careful. You need to find that balance there somewhere.
Well, it's the least important one of what you are seeing in the outside world in terms of impact. But it's the starting point of having those impacts happen down the track.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean here. Yeah.
Well, you see it in your speech, or you see it in your action, which is pretty coarse, and it's pretty clear.
Sometimes, but it depends how much, and depends on many things. Yeah.
But with this, it's something much more internal, or something much more quiet, or much more. It hasn't quite reached the stage of where it has an impact in the outside world.
Yeah, well, exactly, and I think it's more personal. It's more dependent on the personality whether drinking has an effect on you or not. Yeah, this can vary. Some people don't start doing bad things. They just kind of carry on. It just varies enormously how you react to alcohol. Yeah. Anyway, let's carry on because time is going quickly and we are getting sidetracked. So, not receiving gold and money. Yeah, then we have not receiving raw grain. Not receiving raw meat, not receiving women and girls, not receiving male and female bond servants, not receiving goats and sheep, not receiving chickens and pigs, not receiving elephants, cows, horses and mares, not receiving fields and land. So what is that all about? Turkeys are acceptable according to this. It doesn't specific commentary. You have to write a new commentary. So what this is about? It's interesting that raw meat is the one that is missing from the Chinese version of the sutta. It's actually not there. All the other ones are there in the Chinese version. And
Chinese
version. And I suspect that the raw meat may be something that has been added later on, because there is a common theme in all the other ones. All the other ones are the sort of things that make a person wealthy. Yeah, you have a large amount of grain stored up. Of course, you don't have raw meat stored up; that's impossible. But you have raw grain stored up. Yeah, and all of these other things are like status symbols. Yeah, women and girls maybe you have many wives or whatever. Lots of servants and slaves. Yeah. All these animals, these are some of the things by which you were judged in ancient society, whether you're wealthy or not. How many animals you had, especially the number of cows, was very important for whether you were a wealthy person or not. And then you have at the bottom, you have land and fields. Yeah, obviously also something that makes you into a wealthy person and gives you a certain kind of status. So I would say that all of these things are the things that you give up as an ascetic, as a samana, because these are the things that actually give you a status as a layperson and make you into a wealthy person. So this is why you shouldn't own these kind of things. Of course, in the modern Buddhist world, it's quite common for monastics to own things like fields and land, for example. It's not that uncommon. Sometimes you inherit monasteries. Yeah, you inherit from your the previous abbot. You happen to be the same family as the previous abbot, and then you inherit the monastery, and then you actually become the de facto owner of that monastery. Yeah. So it shows you that the idea of being an ascetic is to be poor. You're not really supposed to have anything. Yeah, you're not supposed to own stuff. You don't really need these kind of things anymore because you are kind of heading in a very different direction. So I think this is why it is all there, and why I think raw meat doesn't quite fit the category. I think it may have been added later on, because raw meat is more, we shouldn't eat raw meat. It's more part of that side of things, but it hasn't got to do with what you might call the core idea of being an ascetic or being a samana in that society or our society here. Okay, let's carry on. You refrain from running errands and messengers. From buying and selling. Again, this is a kind of a core thing in as a monastic, one of the Nisargapacitya rules that we have. And then you get some strange one at the bottom here, falsifying weights, metals, or measures. You can't do that as a monk. Okay? You can't do bribery, fraud, cheating, and duplicity. Oh, that's terrible. And you can't do mutilation, murder, abduction, banditry, plunder, and violence. So all of these things are no good if you are a monk. It's not all that surprising, is it? And it's kind of strange, right, that you have all of these things at the end here, because these are, you would think, very, very obvious things. Anyway, they are pretty much covered already by the previous precepts, by the right action in terms of not killing and right action in terms of not stealing. It's already covered by those things. And you wonder why it is there. And of course, if you do compare this with the Chinese version of the sutta, all of these things are missing in the Chinese version. This whole section here is missing. This one is missing because, again, it's bleeding obvious that it shouldn't be doing this. False weights and measures. This one too is missing in the Chinese. Buying and selling, I think this one too is actually missing. And running messengers and errands is also missing. So all of these things are things that are obviously true. The first two here, you could maybe argue that they belong in here, but they all look like there are additions that have come later on, and the Chinese version might be more original. And so then you are left with a very kind of simple ethic, if you look at it like that. And that simple ethic is the basic idea of the right action and right speech, and then the idea of living a simple life, not accumulating things. And that is kind of the things that they praise the Buddha for, rather than all of these kind of detailed things that come afterwards. Yeah?
I don't know, you were describing before that it's like things that people would own.
Yeah.
And with this part, it almost seems like it is livelihood. It's how you are making money or how you are surviving, basically. Not as a monastic, of course, but... that is kind of comes under this to some extent as well, is that the idea of having right livelihood. And that actually comes further down in the sutta, that the right livelihood is described in much more detail later on. So that already seems to be almost part of it. Okay, such is an ordinary person's praise of the realized one. And that is the end of the shorter section on ethics. And I said before that I was going to compare this to the section on ethics in the Chula Hattipadopama Sutta, the shorter discourse on the elephant's footprint. And that sutta, ethics, is exactly that part there. Those are exactly the same kind of ethics that you see in that sutta. And it stops there in that sutta. But this sutta carries on. So now that we have done the Chula Sila, now it goes on to the Majjhima Sila, the middle Sila. And now we get into much more detail about Sila. So I'm going to read through this very fast because I don't think it is all that super interesting. And then I will just discuss very briefly why it is there and what kind of the some of the ideas for what has actually happened in this particular sutta. So there are some ascetics and Brahmins who, while enjoying food given in faith, still engage in injuring plants and seeds. So the point here is that you are enjoying food given in faith. The idea is that when you become a monk or a nun or an ascetic, it's like you have a contract with
Buddhism at large, that you have to live up to certain standards. And if you live up to certain standards, then you get the support of the lay people in return. So there's a mutual contract of how we should live this life. And this is what this really is about. You have to live up to that kind of contract, really. And this is important, very important. And the basic contract is that we should live ethically according to the monastic rules. This is one of the main kind of things. And as long as you do that, then generally speaking, you will be accepted by Buddhist society at large. And what happens very often is that if you don't live according to this contract, then very often people get very disappointed with the monastics. And for good reasons, because this is, after all, the whole idea of the monastic life. And so if you want to promote Buddhism, and you want Buddhism to last for a long time into the future, the very minimum requirement is to live an ethical life according to this contract that you have with Buddhism in general. Yes?
Is just the word sort of says enjoying food that you've given a plate, so is the injuring plants and seeds connected to as food, or just generically injuring?
This is just generically, it's got nothing to do with specific, because this is just a standard phrase that they use throughout this whole section here. So this is what's happening here. So the idea of living up to the requirements that you have as a monastic. And then it gives details about what this means. But we've already seen injuring plants and seeds already, and now it gives more details on what this actually means. So this looks a bit like a commentary on the previous one here. These include plants propagated from roots, propagated from stems, propagated from cuttings, propagated from joints, and those from regular seeds as the fifth. So these are just various kinds of plants, and it's just a detailed description of what is meant by plants and seeds. That's really all it is. And interestingly, if you go to Majjhima 27, which I just mentioned a minute ago, there, this particular expression is found in the commentary. It's not actually found in the sutta, it's found in the commentary instead, as an explanation for the meaning of destroying plants and seeds. The ascetic Gautama refrains from such injury to plants and seeds. So presumably he will be praised for that as well. Here you are. Such is an ordinary person's praise of the realized one. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who, while enjoying the food given in faith, still engage in storing up goods for their own use. And the idea here is that one of the rules that we have in the Pachittiyas is that you cannot store up food, from one day to another one. But here, this is expanded to a general idea of storing. You don't store anything here. In fact, this is one of the characteristics of the Arahant that is given specifically in the suttas, the 10 things the Arahant cannot do, and one of them is to store things up, like he previously did as a householder. And this is kind of an expression of that, if you like, he or she did as a householder. This includes such things as food, drink, clothes, vehicles, bedding, fragrance, and material possessions. So you can't have too many vehicles, according to this. Storing up vehicles, no good.
That's where we kept the rule, but because the Arahant broke it.
So that is an interesting point. We discussed that actually at the last meeting we had, is that it was an Arahant who kept rice for more than one day because he didn't want to go pindabat, so he actually kept rice. So that is, in a sense, that is like storing rice that he did there. So two possibilities, and maybe that story about the Arahant, maybe he wasn't an Arahant, the person who did that, maybe that was wrong, maybe it was someone else. Or storing has to be understood in a bit more kind of lenient way. I mean, it's not kind of absolute, it's kind of a bit more flexible. So hard to say which one it is. The ascetic Gautama refrains from storing up such goods. Such is an ordinary person's praise of the realized one. And again, it's interesting because it's so easy to end up with a lot of things in your kuti. And the other day when Sunyo came up to my kuti about a week ago or something to have a look at my bed to see, because he's going to construct new beds for the new kutis. And I was a bit kind of embarrassed to take him into my room because I have all these things in my room, kind of bookshelves this way and that way. And it kind of reminded me that maybe it's time to get rid of some of these books, because it's nice to follow these instructions, and to kind of live in a very simple way. So anyway, I have all the sutras on the computer anyway, so I don't really need the books anymore. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who, while enjoying food given in faith, still engage in seeing shows. This includes such things as dancing, singing, music performances, and storytelling, clapping, gongs, and kettle drums, art exhibitions, and acrobatic displays, battles of elephants, horses, buffaloes, bulls, goats, rams, chickens, and quails, star fighting, boxing, and wrestling, combat roll calls of the armed forces, battle formations, and regimental reviews. So basically a fairly broad idea of shows, and things. So very detailed, not just battles of some animals, battles of elephants, and then you have horses and buffaloes and quails. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Battles of quails. I don't know. I haven't seen a quail doing battle, but boxing and wrestling, So we can't do boxing and wrestling. Oh, okay. I think we can deal with that. The ascetic Gautama refrains from such shows. Such is the ordinary person's praise of the realized one. And this is where you start to see the detail here is really almost extraordinary, all of these little things. And one of the things that always struck me about the suttas of the Buddha is that they tend to give a very broad picture of things, often doesn't go into great detail. Look at the Anapanasati Sutta, it gives the 16 steps, but it doesn't really, and that's pretty much as detailed as the meditation instruction is found anywhere in the suttas. And very often it's much more simple than that. It just gives like an outline, it gives a basic idea of what things are like, and doesn't give great detail. And I think the reason for that is because the more detail you give, the more likely it is maybe to be misunderstood. The more likely it is that there are alternative ways of going through the same process that may not be captured properly by that. If you give a very broad outlook, it will sort of include everybody, include different ways of dealing with something. So this way of speaking, giving such great detail, to me, doesn't sound like the word of the Buddha anymore. It doesn't sound like the voice of the Buddha is too detailed. It's getting too much into the nitty-gritty. You can imagine if you give this kind of detail, the battles of bulls and buffaloes or whatever, then what about the next generation? Maybe they have another animal. So that other animal may be not included. If it isn't included, it means you can see those shows. Battles of kangaroos. We can see battles of kangaroos. It's not mentioned in the sutta. If you give such details, obviously it must mean that everything outside is acceptable. And sometimes you can see the battles of the kangaroos down here. You see the kangaroos boxing with each other. You see this all the time. So if you go down and enjoy the boxing of the kangaroos, it's not covered in the sutta. No problem. Happiness. And so this is the problem with this kind of detail. It becomes too constricted to one place and one society. But if you give a general framework that you shouldn't kind of enjoy entertainment, it is far more sensible. But it also means that you have to have disciples who are more mature and more sensible in the way they deal with these things to understand the implication of these rules. So this is the way I see the Buddha teaching. He gives the broad outline. He doesn't tell you which exact animal you shouldn't watch. And so to me, this is a sign already of something not being quite right with this. You're very welcome to disagree, by the way, but this is just my feeling here. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who, while enjoying food given in faith, still engage in gambling that causes negligence. In fact, the Pali word juta here seems to mean something like games, enjoying games, and not necessarily just gambling. That's Ajahn Sudrata's translation. Personally, I think it's a bit too narrow. Anyway, this includes such things as checkers, drafts, checkers in the air, hopscotch, spillikins, board games, tip cat, drawing straws, dice, leaf flutes, toy plows, somersaults, pinwheels, toy measures, toy cards, toy bows, guessing words from syllables and guessing another's thoughts. So, is it? Okay, great. So again, so it gives you this large, instead of just doing the telling you that games are no good. It gives you this kind of very specific kind of games. So card games, are they mentioned here? Yeah, we can play poker. Yeah, no problem. Because it's not mentioned in here. So this is the problem. Yeah, you lose sight of what actually really matters, and that's why this is problematic. Yeah. Okay, so let's call it a day with the sutta. Should we do the Handamayam maybe? Might as well do that, I guess. So.
Handamayam Survadapitai Dukaram Dhamma say Sadhu, 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 Namo.
Okay, so please hang in there. We'll do some chanting for Hugh Sykes. Or should I sit over there? Yeah, okay. So we'll sit over there. What about this one here? Leave it here? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I saw an art exhibition today at Highland.
Oh, really? Oh, that's true. Yeah, okay. Wow. Dodgy. Very dodgy. It was the same one we had last time we were there.
That was like 2 times the amount of art we're talking about.
Sorry?
Like 2 times the amount of people.
Oh, really? So he's getting very creative. Yeah. Okay, why not? Why not though? Okay, so we will now do the chanting. I'll just read out the names before we get to Hugh. So these are the people for today. We have Armidin Halim, liver cancer, Danica Silna for speedy recovery, communication help and allergy relief. Marianne Bacchus passed away. That is, what's his name's mother? Salamita's mother, yeah. Patrick Axgerald, cancer. Magda Chapriuska, something like that. Emotional health. Marianne Puli passed away. Tain Chin Fat, liver and pancreatic cancer stage 4. Frank and Kunjurat for well-being. Soma Yatta Vara passed away in Sri Lanka for rebirth. This is your relation, Anusha? Your grandma? Oh, okay, all right, yeah. Cameron Rathall, in hospital, bitten by a bull shark. Okay. Thomas, Diana, Vincent, Martin, and Lily for health and well-being. Richie, wound recovery, bitten by a dog. Namali Silva family, good health and protection. John Mayer's mental health recovery from COVID. No, that's the next one, is it? John Lean Huat, recovery from colon cancer. Jamie Sukka, okay, for assistance with tinnitus and withdrawal symptoms. Andy Outram, in ICU with neurological complications. Sue Outram for good health and emotional well-being. Danica Silva, good health, peace, and to be free from accidents and misfortune. Okay. The Silva family, well-being and peace of mind. Effie Juacha, something like that. And family, good health and protection. Would be to have a peaceful quarantine for 2 weeks. Okay, that's Woody. That's Sudama's. What is he? What is your nephew? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In Perth, Sharon Wang for safe delivery of baby. Chi Huang, daughter Shui and Ethan have COVID. Rob, Helga, and Poyo Fage may well-being with closure of their business. Judy, fun for good health and well-being. And we have, importantly, what's her name? Her name is, okay, just a second.
Read it on the shrine.
Yeah, I have it here. That's right, Catherine Bulsuk, and she is a strong supporter of this monastery, who is dying in Thailand. She's almost on the way out. She's very old. And then, of course, it is for Hugh Sykes. Oh, actually, Ajahn wrote that first of all, for good health. And then for Hugh Sykes, he's the main person that we're doing this chanting for. And for those of you who don't know, Hugh Sykes was a very long-term standing member of the Buddha Society, very nice and gentle and very kind-hearted person, for those who knew him. And now he has passed away after having had a stroke a few years ago and having had to live with the complications of stroke for many years. Now he's passed away from pneumonia or something. Yeah. So we'll do some chanting for good old Hugh, and we will wish him well wherever he might be now, and may he have a safe and beautiful rebirth in a nice location now. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Asevana chabana panditana cha sevana puja cha pujaniyana etang mangalam uttama patirupade savaso chapube chakata punyata Ata samma panidisha etang mangalam uttama bahusa chanchasi pancha vinayo chasusikito subhasita jaya vacha etang mangalam uttama mata pitu upatana puttadara sasangho anakula cakamanta etang mangalam uttama danan shadhammacariya chanyatakanan shasangho anavajanikam etang mangalam uttama arati virati papa majapana jasanyamo apamado chadame suetang mangalam uttama karavo chanivato chasantuti chakatan yuta kalena dhamma savanang etang mangalam uttama kanti chaso vacha sata samananam shadasana kalena dhamma sakacha etang mangalam uttama tapocha brahmacharya charya sachanadasana nibbana sachikiriya etang mangalam uttama
Sambhavesi
Dashinan Kinshimaya Sana Patika Sanya Nanyamanya Sadhu Kamiche Yamatayata Niyang Putang Ayusa Eka Puta Manurake Evam Pisa Babute Sumana Sang Bhavaye Aparimanang Metan Shasa Balokasme Manasang Bhavaye Aparimanang Udang Ado Chatiriyan Shasang Badang Averang Asapata Tikan Sharang Nisinova Sayanova Yavata Savigata Mido Etang Sating Adikeya Brahma Meta Viharang Idam Ahudite Sharanupagama Silava Tasanena Sampano Kane Suvineya Geda Nahijatu Gabaseya Gunareti Ete Peso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vijacharana Sampano Sugato Lokavidu Anutaro Purisa Dhamma Sarati Sata Eva Manusana Buddho Bhagavati Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sandikiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanahiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhiti Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ujjapatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyaya Patipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Samichi Patipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadigang Chatari Purisa Yuga Niyata Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutarang Punya Ketam Lokasati Nati Me Sarananganya Buddho Me Saranang Vara Etena Satavadena Sotite Hotu Samada Nati Me Sarananganya Samho Me Saranang Vara Etena Satavadena Sotite Hotu Samada Nati Me Sarananganya Sangho Me Saranang Vara Etena Satavadena Sotite Hotu Samada. Okay, so that's it. Let me pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Supatipanno